This will be Detective Kelly. Date today is 5/26/9. As you know, a shooting occurred today out near a club at your friend's house. I'd like you just in your own words to tell me what happened.
We were sitting there watching the wrestling. Marlene was in the kitchen. I looked up at the door and I see somebody trying to ring the bell. I looked right at him. He was wearing a clown outfit.
You can't help but wonder what would drive a person that dresses a clown and ring somebody's doorbell and hand them some flowers and a balloon and then shoot that person in the face.
I was on the corner of the couch, which faces the front door, and I said, Marlene, somebody's at the front door.
Love is one of the strongest motives for homicide. Love gone bad.
The brutality of it is horrifying.
My girlfriend was sitting right next to me.
When a murder of a beloved mother happens just randomly, the first place you look is to the spouse.
He was in a clown outfit.
It's like something a movie's made of. It's almost like fiction, but it really happened.
She opened the door and he handed her this small bouquet of flowers and 2 balloons. And all I heard were 2 shots. We thought she fainted. She looked at me and she shook her head.
A lot of people would say, oh, you live in Wellington next to the swamp. But it's really a pristine part of the world. I feel like I'm living in dreamland.
Wellington is 18 miles west of West Palm Beach. There were houses, but in the middle they built a private airstrip for airplanes to land and then taxi to your back door.
In the 90s, it was peaceful. We felt very safe. And all of a sudden, the Aero Club was on the news. And it wasn't for good reasons.
When people think of South Florida in the early 90s, you're thinking of waves and the ocean and the sand and flip-flops and sunshine.
In the 90s, oh shoot, I was crazy. Hang out, drink beer, go to the beach, play quarters, have a good time.
Florida is a wacky, wacky area. We might be the sunniest state, but we have the shadiest people. I was a new reporter back in 1990, and each of the police departments had signals that we could use to find out what was going on in the field through the 911 calls that were coming in through dispatch. There used to be a saying back then, if it bleeds, it leads. Whatever the most salacious thing is that you can find, give me that. The call came in pretty early in the morning, right when I started my shift. And we heard over the police scanners that somebody had been shot at the Aero Club. We raced out here right away. As a crime reporter in Florida, you just didn't know what you were covering in the early 1990s. This is where it all happened. Takeoff place. When I got here, this whole circular driveway and street was filled with police cars, and then all the media was parked all along down the street the whole way. And my photographer pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Jim, I heard a rumor that the person that shot the victim was dressed as a clown."
There was an individual standing at the door dressed in a clown suit, holding some balloons and flowers, and he came up with a gun and shot it twice.
We knew it was going to be a very big story. It isn't every day that somebody gets shot by a person disguised as a clown. There were so many questions. We needed to find out who the victim, Marlene Warren, was.
These pictures are a part of my life that I miss very dearly. This is my brother, John. That's me, Joe. That's my mother, Marlene. And my stepfather, Mike Warren. Beautiful blue eyes, beautiful smile. She taught me how to be strong. I was just 21 years old when my mother died. I was just starting my life. I'll always keep her close in my heart. My mother was my angel in my life. You know, if I didn't have her, I would have been lost for my whole life. I miss you, Mama.
I first started working hands-on in the investigation of the killing of Marlene Warren in the early 90s when I first came to homicide. Marlene Warren was a woman, at the time of her death, she was 40, and she had fallen in love when she was quite young with Michael Warren. She had 2 children from a prior marriage, and they had a good partnership. Quite a few people describe Michael Warren as a charming fellow, and apparently, by all accounts, gregarious. He wasn't a wallflower, that's for sure.
Michael Warren was a go-getter. You know, he knew he wanted big things in life, and he knew he had to go out and get them. I believe that was a big part of my mother being attracted to him.
In their marriage, Michael Warren basically ran the car business, Bargain Motors, and together they had purchased rental properties.
They owned several properties in 1990 that totaled over $1 million, which was a significant amount of real estate back then. But the rental properties were in one of the roughest areas for crime in Palm Beach County.
I worked for Marlene for 4 or 5 years. I used to help her clean her apartments and get them ready for the next tenant. We smoked more cigarettes. We always found an excuse why we had to extend the coffee period. Marlene rented to people through Section 8 housing. She wanted to give these families a better outlook on life. And she went to her grave with a lot of people owing her money But because they had kids, Marlene would not evict them. She wanted the children to have a roof over their heads.
She was a real good person. She'd try and take care of people as much as she could. She was basically more of a friend than she was a landlord.
I used to go to school with Joey. I think it was 5th grade on up. Joey and Marlene were very, very close. I mean, if she ever needed anything, Joey'd be right there, and vice versa.
What was important to her was a family, sticking together through thick and thin, going through the mud and pulling each other out. That was her motto.
Marlene treated everybody in the neighborhood as her own kid. No matter what, who you was, she didn't care. As long as you didn't do her wrong, she'll do you right. She's always been that way. Of course, she wouldn't have me around. I was a bad influence.
One of the more shocking elements of the Marlene Warren case was the fact that the poor woman was shot in front of her own son and several of his friends.
That day, Michael Warren had left very early in the morning to a horse race track in South Florida. Marlene was enjoying a Saturday morning with kids making breakfast. Nothing should happen to somebody doing that.
I woke up that morning, my mom was in the kitchen and I had a few friends there. My mom was cooking eggs with toast and she had the bacon and she was asking us what we wanted.
Yeah, we was just there to, have fun and, rock and roll and watch TV.
We were eating our breakfast and one of my friends saw colors at the front door and said, somebody's at the front door. We couldn't tell because it was distorted, but it looked like a clown through the glass. And she went to go answer the door. And my mom said, no, sit down, finish your breakfast, I'll get the door. As soon as she opened the door, we were looking and she said, oh, how pretty. And we heard a bang.
A woman has been shot on her doorstep at Wellington's Aero Club by a person dressed in a clown suit. Detectives say it's one of the strangest cases they've ever seen.
It's been 30-something years. In my memory, it's still there. I start to remember a lot. It was so quick, me and Joey was dumbfounded for a split second, like, whoa. And when Mom hit the ground, it's like, it was devastating. Wow.
It echoed through the house. It seemed like slow motion. It happened so fast. It was wild. It was like another world. After the clown shot my mother, they put the flowers down, but my mom was right there.
Marlene was on her side, and then she was bleeding out of her mouth a lot.
Her teeth were missing, and I knew something bad had happened. Blood was coming out of her mouth, and she was gurgling, and it was terrible. It was the worst day of my life. The clown had thick white paint. You couldn't see any skin, because I tried. I tried. They had like a jumpsuit on, a colorful orange wig and black boot shoes. The car was sitting there and idle. When they got to the car, they looked around. I saw some big brown eyes. Even when the foot went into the car, I saw it in slow motion. The clown slid right into the car. It was a white LeBaron and just took off.
They just walked casually, like no running, just turned around, walked, got in the car and took off.
All I could think of is chase that vehicle.
He was out the door, and you can see the 2 tracks leaving from the garage into the yard.
I jumped into the car, just driving like a maniac.
He'd come back a couple minutes later, said I couldn't find her. I couldn't find that damn clown. I just wish Joey would have called him.
There were a lot of police there, and they were setting up the crime scene tape, and the paramedics were still there working on Marlene. At that point, Marlene was still alive. Everybody was hoping that she was going to make it.
Marlene was shot in the mouth, and it entered into the back of her throat and damaged her spinal cord, and immediately dropped her.
One of the things I noticed is that there were still some remnants on the scene after the paramedics left, and you could see some blood on the steps. But there were also 2 Mylar balloons, one that said "You're the greatest," and another one that was Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs and a bouquet of flowers.
There was very little evidence left at the scene. This happened so quickly, and the clown left nothing except for the basket of flowers and the balloons, and then the projectile that was inside Marlene Warren's body. In this case, much like every homicide case, when the team arrives, everybody spreads out. You've got some that are dispatched to look for the car that left. People were dispatched to try to locate the source of the flowers and the clown outfit. It's much like the tentacles go out.
My questions were never about what happened, but why. Was this a hit because of the way that it was orchestrated? We just didn't know that day, but we had a lot of questions.
This is archival footage from the early 90s from when our reporters were covering the murder of Marlene Warren. My name is Mike Magnoli. I've been a reporter for 20 years. I do a lot of crime stories. I like to dig up dirt on folks and scandals and controversy. That's my bread and butter. This was diving into our tape archives, a treasure hunt in a way, you know, trying to go back in time and see what happened here. This was a huge story, and anytime there was a little development or something, you know, happening with the case, we're getting the camera out there, and the reporter is going out there to chase down the story. The husband is suspect number 1, always. And Mike was into all kinds of things. He's a Renaissance man. He had a plane. He owned a racehorse. And he was starting to make some good money in that field. He had a couple of different businesses. Some of them are legit, some of them maybe not so legit.
Michael Warren had a used car dealership called Bargain Motors. He was an astute businessman, ran that business well, had branched out from selling used cars to leasing cars.
A lot of people, when they come to Florida on vacation, they need a car to rent. They find Bargain Motors.
It wasn't like going into your local Mercedes or Lexus dealership. It was a pretty rough and tumble car rental.
My name is Don Carter. I worked at Bargain Motors for Mike Warren back in the 1990s. I don't want to say this in front of women. We found more dildos and sex toys in these cars. We could start our own goddamn porn business. You know, it's a freaky shit these people do.
I have an identical twin named Ronald. He's 2 minutes older than me. He also worked for Mike Warren. We didn't start off working for him. We was hanging out with him, and then we were together so much, basically, Mother did work for me. So that's how we got started. But Mike is a fun-going kind of guy. You know, he's the life of the party. At Bargain Motors, our clientele wasn't the greatest. We took people that had credit cards, normal people, but we also took the rejects that nobody wanted. Basically under 25 years old, bad driving record, whatever it is. You know, our clientele is bad. We'd find guns in our vehicles. I found fingers, numerous other things. Well, we found a gun. Throw the finger out, keep the gun. I mean, a basic car rental, $600 a week. Some of them are paying $6,000 a week. It made Mike Warren a wealthy person. We were making a lot of money. You know, we didn't have any kind of restrictions, law-wise. You know, we thought, good luck trying to take us down, you know?
In 1990, I was a detective with the sheriff's office. We all worked independently. It was hard because you really had to do a lot of footwork. You know, we didn't have computers back then. South Florida is the fraud capital of the world. There's a lot of financial crimes. There's a lot of homicides. The sheriff's office is constantly under scrutiny by the public. Well, they're trying to solve the crime. They're trying to find the perpetrator. So in order to do that, they immediately talked to the young people that were in the house.
Okay, this is Detective Bill Williams. The date is 5/26/90. This being an interview with Joseph Aarons. This is going to be tough, but I'm going to need you to tell me what you observed this morning at your house.
It was a very simple crime if you think about it. Even as crazy as everything that happened, there isn't a lot of evidence in that except for eyewitnesses.
Can you describe him to me?
About 6'1", tall, skinny. He had dark eyes.
It was definitely a male, though. It wasn't a female.
Yeah.
You described the car to me that this guy in the clown suit was driving.
It was white, very.
You often hear it said that an eyewitness account can be very unreliable because you've just seen this shocking, horrible thing. So there were conflicting eyewitness accounts about the clown's attire. The hairstyle on the clown was different. Some thought the clown was wearing a mask, but some thought that it was just makeup.
The perpetrator was dressing as a clown because they wanted to conceal their identity. It worked.
Law enforcement were trying the best that they could, but it was so unusual that the suspect could be completely disguised as a clown and not really gather attention from anybody.
They have a killer, but they're in a clown costume. So that is right out of the gate a big problem for investigators and for prosecutors.
40-year-old Marlene Warren is fighting for her life here at this Palm Beach hospital. Friends and family constantly by her side.
I was at the hospital and it was just hell. I didn't know how to do anything but hold her hand and try to get her attention. I just wanted to see that she was going to be okay. My grandmother had to make a big decision, you know. I wasn't going to make it. I know I wouldn't have made it if it was up to me. I would have never made it. They had to turn the machine off, and my grandmother told me. She was very honest with me, and I kind of knew myself after the third day that we were going to lose my mother. And it was horrible. she was the best person ever. Why does it always happen to the angels? Why do the demons hate the angels so bad?
Joe lost his mother. He witnessed his mother being murdered. He was unable to catch the person that murdered his mother. So ever since then, he's been basically lost.
When I lost her, I lost a part of me. A big part of me.
She's like a sister to me. And I wanted her to be godmother of my kids. I got beautiful memories, though. Memories that nobody can take away from me. At least she got to hold my daughter and my son, her godchild. So they're happy memories. Every memory I have of her is happy. You couldn't help but not be happy around Marlene.
The murder of Marlene Warren was definitely one of the biggest stories back in 1990 for sure. It was on the front page every day of all the local papers. National news was covering it.
There was all sorts of buzz going around the neighborhood, and we're like, wow. I was very surprised that it happened in the Aero Club. I was kind of shocked.
Once the public learned about the murder, one of the things that was really surprising was that there were a ton of clown sightings that just started popping up everywhere.
Somebody manned a phone in the detective bureau that people were calling in. So it was all over the media. You seen a clown, call this number.
There were so many calls from residents saying, hey, I think I saw a clown lurking in the woods.
After talking to these people, some of them you could immediately dismiss.
It used to drive me crazy because I'd be the one to have to go chase the leads for the sightings, and they never turned into anything. People were just very fearful.
I was on a committee to make the rules for the Aero Club. There was somebody from the developer, and there was myself, and then a man by the name of Mike Warren. We would probably meet once a month in the clubhouse. We talked about what would help this be a better aviation community. A few weeks after the murder, we had a committee meeting, and I went there a little early. I think Mike came in right after me. I was surprised. I thought, well, this is interesting. His wife was just murdered. I was a little uncomfortable, didn't know what to say, and I just asked him point blank, Mike, did you have anything to do with this murder? And he said no, and gave me a very succinct, quick, where he was, what he was doing, where he was going, and he had witnesses. Didn't say a word about Marlene. I know how I would have felt. If it was my wife at the time, I wouldn't have been nonchalant.
In every domestic homicide, the significant other is always a person of interest until they're excluded. On the day of the crime, law enforcement immediately interviewed Michael at the sheriff's department.
With me in the interview room is a Michael Kenneth Warren.
What type of relationship did you and your wife have?
I've never loved anybody as much as I've ever loved her in my life.
You got along well?
Always got along well. You always have your ups and downs, but, you know, we've been together 20 years.
From the very beginning, there wasn't a sense of any potential motive from Michael Warren because they were led to believe that, this was a loving marriage, they had no problems, there were no issues.
What time did you leave the house this morning? You stayed there last night.
Yeah, I leave every morning about 8 o'clock.
And you left this morning at that time?
Same time.
Where did you go from after you left the house?
Straight to work.
Did you stay at the business all day?
probably left about 11:15, 11:20. Mr. Bush, the man that drove me over here, were traveling to Miami.
What were you going to Miami for?
Horse racing.
They discovered pretty quickly that he'd been in a car in the company of other people driving southbound to a horse race track in South Florida. So he had an airtight alibi for being present.
Back in the 90s, the cell phones used to be a block about this big. Not many people had them. The cell phones were just coming out. They were about this big. We had one the day of the murder. I had the phone. I said I was only a couple blocks away from Bargain Motors. Mike is at the car lot. You know, he's going to call the race cars to the races. He was pissed, calling the phone every 2 seconds. Get your fucking ass back. I need a fucking phone now. I need you to get back here with a fucking phone now. I said, I'm only a couple blocks away, be right there, you know? So, like, fuck, I need that phone now. I can't go until you get back. And so I got back. He's real pissed, grabs it around my hand real forcefully. He takes off to the track. That makes me think that he knew he had a phone call coming in. Okay, any other time, he wouldn't give a shit about the phone.
This morning, you were headed south toward Miami?
Right.
And how were you contacted then, or what happened there?
Telephone. I got a phone call when we were down to about Woolbright Road.
On your portable phone?
Right.
And who was that?
That was Joey calling my son.
He told you about that incident? And then what did you do?
We turned around and went straight to the hospital.
I'm Christopher DeSantis. I'm an attorney in Southern Florida. I earned the nickname Mad Dog because I would never let go. In 1989, I was representing Joey Aaron.
Joey got in some kind of trouble. He went to a party. Somebody pulled out a knife. They stabbed another kid. So they charged everybody, you know. So Marlene had to get an attorney to represent Joey.
I got into some trouble with some friends. And this lawyer, Mike asked him some questions, you know, some off-the-wall questions.
We came out of a crowded courtroom, and he asks me, can a husband inherit from his wife if he murdered her? I pulled him aside, and I leaned over to him and said, law says that if you murder your wife, that you cannot inherit. However, there are other circumstances where you might inherit. Then I gave him a what-if scenario. What if somebody came up to your wife dressed in a clown suit so they couldn't identify them?
This lawyer told him, be a clown. You know, you'll get away with it. And it's funny, this is exactly what happened.
There's no doubt in my mind that that comment, in one way or another, led to her death. And I really regretted it all my life.
Speed Detective Kelly. I'll be interviewing Jamie Twing. Ms. Twing is the stepsister of the victim in this case, Marlene Warren. You indicated that about 6 to 8 weeks ago you received a phone call from Marlene. Can you tell me again what that phone call is about?
She just kept telling me, if anything happens to me, get Joey out of the house.
At Marlene Warren's funeral, the sheriff's office conducted covert surveillance. Generally speaking, the arsonist always returns to the fire, the criminal always returns to the scene of the crime, and they figured if they could videotape the people that were attending the funeral, it might lead to something more to solve the crime.
Oh my God, there were so many people there. A lot of law enforcement, a lot of detectives, undercovers. They even had a helicopter flying over. I'm glad they were doing that. We need to get answers.
The funeral was the worst part. I couldn't stop shaking for the life of me. I just couldn't stop shaking. At that point, all my dreams were gone.
I said my goodbye, told her I loved her, and that's all I could handle that day. Mike was standing outside the whole time. You would think that he would be inside by Marlene, but he wasn't. He was standing outside just BSing with people.
The police officers investigating, they want to know why Mike's not crying. He was there, giving his respect, but it wasn't his worst day.
Marlene was sitting at my house and was having a cup of coffee and smoking our cigarettes, and her phone rang, and she got this real, horrid look on her face, and she screamed, "Oh my God, my oldest son, John, he's been in a car accident." The next day, she called me and told me that Johnny didn't make it.
When I lost my brother, it was very traumatizing for me and my mother. Mike didn't care. Literally didn't care.
Mike wasn't very supported after Johnny died. Marlene was like a lost soul. She wasn't a happy-go-lucky person with a smile all the time.
She didn't want airplanes and runways in the backyard. You know, she wanted him to come home and be home, and he had other alternatives.
She was grieving. She was looking for a shoulder to cry on. She was looking for compassion and support. And Mike is busy with his businesses, so he's not there for her.
You know, at the end, they fought a lot, Marlene and Mike. I've been over and they had fights. You can hear her screaming in the bedroom. You can hear shit being thrown around. Now, I wasn't in the bedroom to visually see it, but, you know, she comes out, she got bruises, she's bleeding. It got pretty bad at the end.
This is Detective Bill Williams. The date is June 1st, 1990. Interview with Deborah. What can you tell me about your sister recently? I think we ought to know.
About a year ago, she called me and she said that he beat her up and she threatened to leave him and he threatened her kill her.
He said he'd kill her if she left him?
Yeah.
For the next 4 to 5 days after the murder, we spent a lot of time trying to find out everything we could about the Warren family. And another thing we found out was that as we started doing criminal background checks, we saw that Michael Warren had been convicted in 1983 for rolling back odometers of cars to show that they had less mileage to make them more valuable. What that meant was he was not allowed to continue to own the business under the laws of the state of Florida, so he had to turn the businesses over to his wife. All of the assets that Marlene and Michael owned as far as business was all under Marlene's name.
Typically in a homicide, you always want to look at the motive. Did Marlene have enemies? Did somebody want her killed? Was her husband involved? So the sheriff's office detectives interviewed lots and lots of people in order to develop leads in attempting to solve the crime. You know, there were reports Michael Warren had stated to several people that it's cheaper to have his wife killed than to divorce her because they were quite wealthy.
Detective Kelly, the date today is 6/21 of 90. Presently in every room of the Sheriff's Office headquarters with John Douglas Moran. When did you first meet Mike Warren?
I first met Mike when I went to apply for a job.
At Bargain Motors?
At Bargain Motors.
How long did you work for Mr. Warren?
About a year and a half.
Would you say you were pretty close?
I would say yes, real close.
And what kind of conversation did he make with you as far as his wife was concerned?
That he wished he'd get rid of the bitch, wished he'd never married the lady, sick and fed up with her shit.
Did he ever make any direct statements that he wanted to get rid of her?
Oh, sure. But I asked Mike one time, why don't you just divorce the lady? If you're that miserable.
What did he say as far as the divorce thing with Marlene?
He couldn't divorce her because he couldn't afford to give her half of what he had.
So it was a money thing?
It was a money thing, strictly money. Everything for Mike is money. Everything.
Michael Warren had an airtight alibi for being physically present, but he still was included as a suspect because of the financial reward that he would get by Marlene being murdered as opposed to a divorce, which would be very costly. So clearly he was still in the mix. They just knew that they couldn't place him there physically.
All he had to do was say, give me a divorce. She would have given it to him. But she was worth a lot more to him dead than alive.
2 weeks before the murder, my mom sat me down and said, hey, I got to talk to you. And she was telling me pretty much that she was going to leave Mike. At that point, when she knew she was going to leave him, she started organizing. She started planning. I said, let's go. Let's go now. She said, I have things I have to do first.
She come up and asked me, if I was to leave Mike, will you take me to the airport? Joey and I. And I said, sure, no problem. But I never did get to take her because the day before she was supposed to leave, that's when she was murdered. And I never got to see her again.
The clown had given Marlene Warren a basket with flowers and some balloons. That was the only evidence left by the shooter. Typically, now we'd look at the balloons and get a little SKU number and you could trace down where that balloon was sold. But back then, you had the phone book. So they went and called all the florists, all the people that sold flowers in the area to find the articles that were involved in the crime.
The only one that they could find nearby was a public grocery store midway between Marlene Warren's home and downtown West Palm Beach. And they went to confirm for themselves if that Publix had sold such an arrangement.
A clerk at the Publix described selling the flowers and the balloons to a woman with long, dark hair.
She had paid cash. They actually were able to provide the receipt for the arrangement.
Cashier in the grocery store gave a decent description of the female. The sheriff's office was working on very few leads. The Publix grocery store information is huge because it opened up another avenue for them to investigate whoever this woman was.
In the early phases of the investigation, even though Mike had an alibi and was not there when the crime was committed, there were these rumors about him having an affair.
On the day of the homicide, within hours, law enforcement got 2 anonymous phone calls. Right away, they were given the heads up that this is something we need to follow up on.
Hi. Being recorded? Yes, it is. There's no way anybody's gonna know who I am, is there? What's the problem, ma'am? Marlene Warren was just shot earlier today. I'm afraid to say this. I'm afraid you'll use it and you'll know it was me. I think you just need to ask Sheila Keene and Mike Warren a few questions.